Welcome in, everyone, to another live The Hawk's Eye podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Coutts, and tonight it's a double whammy. It's State of the Hawks with Mookie Alexander plus a live game preview. So excited to have everyone that's going to be joining us in the chat and everything. So, Mookie, first off, how you been, man?
I've been doing all right. Of course, for those of you who don't know, Wednesday was my birthday. So I think the early birthday gift was watching Seattle hammer Washington. So maybe I can double down and watch them beat Arizona incident-free on Sunday because they've had no trouble, include injuries or just WTF plays or whatever. But yes, this is the calm before the storm because I know everybody's looking ahead to that Rams game and how important that game is. But it's a huge weekend for the NFC West because everybody's playing each other. Seattle against Arizona and the Rams against the 49ers. And I got to admit, I'm not quite sure who I want to quote unquote win that game. I wish they could both lose, but somebody's probably going to win. And I'm not quite sure yet who I want to win. It might be San Francisco. So maybe the better way to put this is, who do I want to lose more?
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see, and we'll have to see how our Hawks handle it. So we've got an action-packed show for you guys tonight. So make sure you're active in the comments. Get your comments in there. Your super chats are always welcomed as well. So, Mookie, we'll get into everything involving this game and the State of the Hawks right after this.
Fires to the end zone. Ball is caught. Touchdown! Seahawks! Dunking it over the bar is Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Driving on the run, Wentz. 40. Pushes the man. 35. Look at him go. He's down to 20. 15. He could go. He is going to go. Touchdown, Seahawks! Oh, my word! A 67-yard run.
All right, let's get into it tonight, Mookie, and let's talk about this next man up. So obviously injury reports have kind of come out for the Seahawks and the Cardinals going into this game, but you've seen a bunch of injuries for this team throughout the entirety of this season. Like this team actually, I think the only time they were truly fully healthy was either the first 5 minutes, I think, of that San Francisco game. And then since then, this team's missing somebody, whether it be on defense, whether it be on offense. So it's kind of truly this 12-1 next man up mentality. And going into this game, it's going to be tested again, Mookie. But what has your thoughts been so far on this team and its depth in this season?
It's been better than expected. Certainly, week one, you and I were sort of lamenting Ty Okada's performance when Eamon Warrior went out. But Ty Okada is not a box safety, and I think he's done admirably filling in for Julian Love. So Okada has been performing well. Drake Thomas has done well in place of Tyrese Knight. I don't think that's really a next man up situation as much as it is we like somebody better than the other. And then you look at Darion Kendrick early on in the season. He's not even playing really these last few weeks, but when he was called upon against Pittsburgh and against New Orleans, he made a couple of quality plays. So I believe that the Seahawks roster, and Amy Holmes in the comments going 75-man roster. Yeah, truly. And then you look at last week with all the injuries at wide receiver, and Cody White appears and gets a 60-yard touchdown, first NFL touchdown of his career. So even from the practice squad, they're getting contributions. D'Anthony Bell, I'm pretty sure, was a practice squad elevation on the day that he got a block punt against New Orleans. So we haven't had this feeling in a while. So, for example, the 2013 team had a lot of injuries. Now, I'm not saying that the guys like Paul McQuiston and Michael Bowie necessarily stepped up to the task, but Malcolm Smith had to replace an injury. I think it was either Bobby or KJ who missed time. I think it was Bobby. And Malcolm Smith had to step in for a certain period of time. When Browner got suspended, that was kind of the coming out party for Byron Maxwell. And I'm getting those vibes again. Not saying this is a Super Bowl team or anything, but just to have that depth. Just for context, look what happened in, let's say, 2016 when Earl broke his leg and we had to endure the Steven Terrell experience. So we had too many of those moments. Or when, I can't remember which linebacker was hurt then, but we had to have Brock Coyle get snaps or Kevin Pierre-Louis, guys who were just not capable and not good enough to justify any snaps. This is a different Seahawks team in the sense that, no, I don't expect elite play from the depth guys, but I expect competence or something close to it, not game-damaging bad. And so far, these guys have not been game-damaging bad. And that is a thrilling thing to think about. And it also helps that the depth on the offensive line hasn't been needed, because that's usually where your depth tends to be the biggest liability. But in other key positions, they've been really, really good.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, we're looking at guys like a Ty Okada stepping in and not having the play. Like, again, Julian Love, we're talking about an all-pro, but we're looking at Ty Okada stepping in here and playing as an above-average starter at safety. We're not seeing it where, okay, this guy, should be on the practice squad. Like, those are kind of those issues back in the days that you were talking about there, Mookie, with the Steven Terrells, where it was like, oh gosh, like, this is just not going to work at all. Like, this is just horrible. So it'll be interesting to see. But on the flip side, the Cardinals are also dealing with a massive amount of injuries, and we'll obviously talk about that when we get to the preview part of the show. The next thing, Mookie, like, I want to kind of talk to you about on this, next man up situation is these rookies that we saw kind of go off in the Commanders game. We saw Elijah Arroyo come to life in that game. We saw Torrey Horton come to life in that game. We knew what we were getting, I think, more or less in Gray Zabel and Nick Eamon-Warry to a point. But I think we always had questions on, okay, like Torrey Horton, everyone was raving about how great he could be because he has all this talent. He was potentially supposed to be a second-round pick that fell due to injuries, and we were looking and waiting for Elijah Arroyo. Like, hey, we saw this great stuff. Like, he's supposed to be this field stretcher down the middle. They have all these ideas, and we hadn't really seen it come together. We had seen splashes of it, but against the Commanders, it kind of really came to life for both of them. They now have to step up even more, and I know Torrey Horton, unfortunately, has been injured this week in practice, but what do you make of these rookies stepping up as well?
I think that this is, or let me rephrase that. I think that the Commanders game was John Schneider's biggest win of the season. So I've had my criticisms of Schneider, but I've had my praises of him. I try to be as fair as possible. I said around this time last year, if he will not change his philosophy in the offensive line, then it's time to move on. Well, they extended him way before that. So that, way before today. So that was already out the window, but he changed his philosophy enough on the offensive line to draft a guard, a starting caliber guard. And I think Zabel has been a good player by rookies, not even by rookie standards. He's just been a good offensive lineman, and especially in pass pro. I know the run block has not been great for the interior. I am much more worried about the pass pro in today's NFL than I am about the run blocking, because without the pass pro, just imagine what would have happened if the run blocking wasn't holding up. So when you think about the rookies who did show out against Washington, Torrey Horton, 2 touchdowns on 4 catches. You had Elijah Arroyo gets his first touchdown on a great throw by Darnold, but you're watching Arroyo line up as, in line. It wasn't one of those where he split out wide. In line, and he just blows past Washington's. It was either a safety or a linebacker. Blows right past him, shows off his speed for a tight end, and just great route, easy touchdown for him and his first of his career. And then that play happened one play after Connor O'Toole gets a fumble recovery on the kick return. That was the first time all season Seattle forced a fumble, let alone recovered a fumble. So you're even getting contributions on special teams for the undrafted free agents. So when you think about the way that this Seahawks season has gone, this could be a truly special draft class, such that Jalen Milroe is now way deep in the background in terms of, okay, are we worried about, can we get Milroe in the game? Now, we don't have to worry about that now. It's like there's not even a need to do the gadget play stuff because the offense is doing well enough without that. And Sam Darnold is performing at an exceptional level that it is a bonus if Jalen Milroe actually improves enough to be a starting level quarterback that makes you second guess keeping Sam Darnold around on the long term. But even still, you're getting great contributions from Zabel. Eamon-Warry is now playing regularly after the injuries early on in the season, and he's having one wow play seemingly every week. You're getting good, not even good, very good play from Torrey Horton. He's got 6 touchdowns. He's got 5 receiving touchdowns, and among rookies, that's tied for the lead with Emeka Egbuka, who might run away with Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now, Ibuka, of course, has got the catches, but for Horton to be the third option on this team and have 5 touchdowns, which I think is the same as JSN, that is no small accomplishment. That's a big deal. So, yes, this rookie class looks, to me, in line with the previous draft classes from 2022 onward. We've finally moved away from these weird reaches and overdrafting guys and drafting for need desperately. Like, yeah, they probably needed a running back, but they didn't need to take Rashad Penny in the first round, for example. Or they might have needed some help on the defensive line, but that didn't mean take LJ Collier late in the first round. They are targeting guys like Byron Murphy and Devin Witherspoon and Charles Cross and Gray Zabel. Not a single one of those guys to me would be a quote-unquote draft reach. And then they're making their hay in the middle portions of the draft again. And I mentioned that Milroe's in the background. Riley Mills is probably not even going to play this year. So there is time yet in the long term for this rookie class to be even more impressive.
Yeah, Riley Mills is the one I'm still really interested about because I think when he steps on this D-line, that is going to be a very scary thing because I could see them as much as he was an interior defensive lineman for Notre Dame. I could see him moving into what a DeMarcus Lawrence role kind of is as that big edge run stopper on the outside that gives you a plus side with his pass rush capability. Overall, though, you can't, to your point, Mookie, like these draft classes have been hits. This free agent class this year has been a hit. And that's something we haven't been able to say in Seattle for a very long time is we nailed a draft and we nailed a free agency class. Like the only real bad signing, or I wouldn't even say it's a bad signing, but questionable signing was MVS. But we did that. And you can see the reason we did that is we didn't know what we were going to get in the draft at receiver. We ended up getting Torrey Horton. MVS didn't work out, and boom, he was gone. And yeah, okay, we're going to eat the cap for it this year. But outside of that, the Cooper Kupp signing's been a good one. Yes, I know there's a bunch of people that are griping about his injury right now and everything. Like he's not going anywhere next year. I don't see Cooper Kupp not being on this roster, and what he has done and what he's been asked to do so far in this offense and within this locker room has been huge. DeMarcus Lawrence was a huge upgrade for us on that area, and it's actually, I think, to an extent, unlocked Chenna. Because Chenna's been able to go back to being the pass rushing menace he was like the first year he was in Seattle. Then you look at Sam Darnold. We got an MVP currently, the way he is playing right now, has to enter that MVP conversation a little bit, level quarterback for cheaper than what we would have paid for the guy that's currently in Vegas and Geno Smith. Like John Schneider, if Seattle makes the NFC Championship game, like I've predicted with the 13-4 record, Mookie, and they make it there, there's no reason in my mind that John Schneider should not win Executive of the Year.
Mm-hmm. And it's a regular season award, of course. And historically, winning Executive of the Year means you're about to be fired in 2 years. But I see no reason why he shouldn't win it. I know that the Colts are having a great season, unexpectedly so, and it's emotional for them given that their owner died not too long ago. But I can see some regression coming for Indies very soon. And it may have started as soon as last week. With Daniel Jones turning it over 5 times against Pittsburgh. I think the Colts are a good team, but they're not, to me, a scary elite team. Whereas the Seahawks have that potential to be a scary elite team because they are balanced again. Balanced in a good way. You can be balanced like the Cincinnati Bengals. Well, not the Bengals. You can be balanced in a bad way. You can be 29th, 30th, and 31st. That's very balanced at the bottom of the poll. But toward the top, this is closer to the Legion of Boom era Seahawks. And we haven't really been able to truly say that since the 2015 season, because I think 2016 was the real start of the decline in terms of the effectiveness of the team. And one other thing to note about the draft classes, I would say the 2024 class is probably going to go down as the weakest of the 4, because after Barner and Murphy, there's not a lot there, especially since Knight has lost his starting job. But if Barner keeps playing like this, he can be one of the more underrated tight ends in the league, maybe an above-average tight end. And Byron Murphy ends up being one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league. Like, you're not always going to get home runs in every draft class. It's unreasonable. And you're going to say something? Go ahead.
I'm going to say something. You are forgetting about Kenny McIntosh, sir. Kenny McIntosh is still a viable part of that draft class.
Well, that's because he was part of the 2023 class and not 2024.
Oh, I thought it was 2024 class. Am I wrong?
No, but you know what? That's, to me, we're going off on a tangent. That is one of the biggest what ifs of this season is what Kenny McIntosh could have done in this offense, since they don't really want to give Charbonnet and Walker any routes. and that McIntosh would have been suitable for this scheme. But that aside, yes, it's a great point you make about the draft, the free agency class, because last year, I mean, that was basically as bad as the 2017 one when they signed Joko and the offensive line, Ode Abushi, that offensive line redo, the Eddie Lacy signing, like that would get a lot of GMs fired. How bad that offense, that draft free agency class was. Last year's free agency class, whether it was Rayshon Jenkins or Laken Tomlinson, those were too close to what we had kind of shifted all the blame to Pete for. And it made you question, all right, how much of this really was Pete? How much really? I think they both own some level of responsibility. But by making the bold decisions, or just big decisions, maybe not necessarily bold, making the big decisions to trade Geno, just because Geno said he wanted out doesn't mean you had to trade him. But they traded him, and it's paid off. They traded away DK. DK didn't want to be here. Well, there are a lot of people who don't want to be with the team that they're with, but that doesn't mean that they absolutely have to be traded. This ain't the NBA. And he traded him, and so far it's worked out. And he's moved on from Tyler Lockett, and I think that was kind of expected, but they did make major decisions with the roster and the coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball, and kind of this makeover. It's not a full-scale rebuild, as I have seen described earlier this week. It wasn't a full-scale rebuild, but it was enough of a major retooling such that I think that is actually when Schneider is at his best. When he has to kind of disassemble the product a bit and then rework some things, get some upgrades here and there, I think that's when he's at his best. It's when he has a contender or at least a middling to good team that he can get a little bit. To me, I think the criticism with him is we get too much of the safe pair of hands type of off seasons where we're just doing 1-year patches that really don't work out, and those are guys who end up not being worthy of being re-signed. So this has been a masterclass offseason for John Schneider, and I was lukewarm on it initially, but especially with the MVS signing, which I wasn't a fan of. But as the offseason progressed, and then once the draft happened, that's when I went, okay, maybe there is something there that at the minimum they should be thinking about the playoffs. And so far, to me, it would take a horrible collapse for them to miss the playoffs, because the toughest part of their schedule will probably be at around the time that they might have already clinched a playoff berth, I think.
Yeah, and you know what? This is going to be a really good segue because we're kind of talking about this team as a whole right now. But Mookie, how much more dangerous are the Seahawks now? They've added Rashid Shaheed to this offense. You're getting guys healthy, and Sam Darnold and JSN are both playing like league MVPs right now, which is kind of crazy to say you have two of those potential candidates on your offense and roster, and this defense is just playing lights out football, and we kind of expected that. So my first question is, what does the Shaheed trade tell you about where Mike McDonald and John Schneider think this team currently is? What is their mindset right now?
I think their mindset is they knew they needed a little bit more help at the wide receiver position. And it's not to slight Torrey Horton, who isn't playing this week in all likelihood, but it is just conceptually, I believe, that it's not like they never run 11 personnel. But I think they have more flexibility to run different 3 receiver looks in 11 personnel than they otherwise would have if it was just JSN, Kupp, and Horton. So once everybody's healthy again, you can have JSN, Kupp, and Horton, or JSN, Horton, and Shaheed, or JSN, Shaheed, and Kupp. So I think any of those combos is fine. If you have JSN, Shaheed, and Horton, goodness gracious, I mean, that's a lot of quickness and speed and route running that you're getting from those 3 guys collectively. So I am of the opinion that they think that this passing offense can go even another level without heavily relying on JSN. And Shaheed's having a great season, given that he's had substandard quarterback plays on a miserable Saints team. 44 catches for 500 yards, and I forgot how many touchdowns. And the thing with Spencer Rattler before he got benched, he just wasn't pushing the ball down the field enough. Sam Darnold was going to push the hell out of the ball down the field. Derek Carr was pushing the ball down the field in the few weeks that he was able to play before he got injured, and then later Shaheed got injured. So I believe that Shaheed is going to be an important part of this offense moving forward, and I hope he is a longer-term signing, because Kupp, let's face it, may not be here as soon as 2026. And at best, I think he has 1 more season here. So that's why I was fine with, even though I'm not thrilled to give up 2 draft picks and only have 4 next year, I think the principle of adding a receiver was something that I was in favor of. It never needed to be a high-end number 1 or number 2 receiver. I think Rasheed Shaheed and Torrey Horton are going to be kind of like the battling for the second receiver spot for years to come. And Shaheed, with his experience alone, is going to be a little bit more polished than Torrey Horton. And I think he's going to have that comfortability instantly by being with Clint Kubiak's scheme. And I think you mentioned it in your solo show, he could help with the run game because they ran a jet sweep with JSN, and I feel like they haven't done that enough. You can do that with Rashid Shaheed. I really don't want them to do end around stuff where they're pitching the ball in the backfield because I don't trust that line to block laterally all that well. But you can motion Shaheed or even fake a handoff, jet motion to Shaheed and hand it off to your running back. You have another person who you have to respect as a running, speedy threat. And that's where I feel like Shaheed adds another element to this offense.
I think we'll see Cooper Kupp be here in 2026, and I think you'll see Cooper Kupp retire. I think he'll play the rest of this year, the rest of 2026, and then you'll see Kupp retire. It's actually really interesting because there's a bit of a thing going on right here, but Dan put this and goes, Kupp will be a coach for the Seahawks or the receiver coach. It's a very strong possibility. He's already coaching him up on the sideline as it is with being out. But tell me what you think of this comp for Shaheed and Mookie. And this is how I kind of view him, and I think it's a pretty fair comp. He gives me a lot of Emmanuel Sanders vibes with a little bit more top-end speed. Like, he's not just a Ted Ginn, I only know how to run the post or the bang 7 or bang 8 or run the go. He can run a lot of the different routes that are required of a receiver of his skill set, which just gives me a lot of the Emmanuel Sanders vibes of what Emmanuel Sanders was able to bring to the teams that he went to after Pittsburgh. And I think it does two things for this offense. It, again, gives you another threat. So JSN isn't your over-the-top guy. It takes the pressure off Torrey Horton to not have to step up huge when there's injuries like to a Cooper Kupp. Because, like, what Torrey did versus the Commanders was absolutely phenomenal. But I also can't sit there and go, I expect Torrey Horton when he's in a receiver 2 spots to get 2 touchdowns every game. Like, that's just not something I'm going to expect year 1 as a rookie. But the jet sweeps, teams having to respect the speed over the top and not being able to load the box should have a trickle-down effect to this run game. And in the sense of being able for the offensive line to make easier, I would say, targeting adjustments in their zone scheme because there aren't so many bodies crowding that box.
Yeah, and I think as well as Cooper Kupp has played, we know that this is not Triple Crown Cup, not remotely close to it. So there's essentially one guy on the field where you do not have to really bother defending him 25, 30 yards down the field on a go route, on a post route, any of that. It's just not a thing that he's really doing a lot these days. He's very much an intermediate guy, a short zone catch in the zone, sit in the zone, and then turn upfield kind of guy. Whereas Shaheed, Horton, and JSN, you got 3 guys now, all of whom can go long and make a big play. Kupp really can't do that. He can still make some explosive plays, but those would be kind of the firecracker explosives. The Horton, JSN, and Shaheed explosives would be like Wile E. Coyote using Acme Dynamite, that type of explosive. So I think that this is going to be a big help to the Seahawks offense. There really wasn't anybody else I had my eye on because Jacoby Myers, for example, whom I think would be a good fit for Seattle, he's not. There's no reason for him to go from wide receiver 1 in Las Vegas to being a third option in Seattle. He could easily be a top option in Jacksonville right now. Brian Thomas Jr. is going to still be in the doghouse, and Travis Hunter's hurt. So any other receiver who was a potential to be traded, I felt that Olave was not realistic and that the Saints would have tried to keep him because they don't want to just move on from all the young players that they have because they have to build around a quarterback eventually. But Shaheed, I suspect they wouldn't have extended him, whereas I think Seattle could extend him. And because he wasn't super productive those first 3 seasons, and now he's hitting some productivity levels now, I think he can be had for a pretty affordable contract as a third option receiver. So, like, let's say $11 million or $12 million a year. And I don't think anybody would bat an eye at that. Nobody would complain. You've got 3 receivers in JSN, Horton, and Kupp under the age of 30, all of whom have got very good skill sets. Some of them overlap, but there's that speed element where we're kind of recreating. I can't believe I'm saying this. They're sort of recreating DK in the aggregate with the speed, but they're getting way better route running. And I feel like the theme of the Kubiak offense and what Schneider did with this offseason is that even though I actually believe that Metcalf could eat in this offense because of all the play action success, though he would be able to have some big plays at a lower cost, you've got guys who are all pristine route runners. They open up the route tree so much in ways that a guy like DK can't, and a way that Kupp really no longer can. So that's to me where I'm super stoked to see what he can do, because with Horton likely not playing, I think we're going to see Shaheed kind of thrown into the fire, if you will, and be a lot more involved than we think. And it also, to me, indirectly takes a lot of pressure or some pressure off of the idea that Elijah Arroyo should also just be a big-bodied receiver, because he should still be, as a tight end, doing some inline work. He should still be learning how to get better in his blocks, so that you have two dangerous tight ends in Barner and Arroyo. And Arroyo in a pinch can be another big, X-type receiver, but you still want your receivers to be receivers.
And that's going to be the thing that you really want to focus on. And it's going to be tested this week, right? We were talking about it earlier. Torrey Horton probably not playing this game. Kupp, it sounds like, is going to try and go. He was, I think, a full participant today. So that leads you to believe he's going to play. But you're going to probably see Cody White get elevated again. Doesn't sound like Jake Bobo or Derek Young is going to be back anytime soon. So it's going to really test Seattle's depth here. But, opportunity often breeds breakthrough. And we'll find out if that holds true this Sunday at Lumen, as we'll get into it right now. The Seahawks versus the Cardinals. And the way I look at this, Mookie, is can Seattle handle business without slipping? I am going to tell you this right now. There is still PTSD for me from 2017 when the beat up, at that time, Washington Redskins walked into Seattle on a rainy day, and Kirk Cousins and that miserable offensive that he had that was kind of just pieced together beat the Seahawks. And we were all sitting there going, like, Seattle should blow these guys out. It's not even going to be close. And we ended up losing that game. That, to me, there's still that PTSD that sometimes lingers when I look at a team that, like the Cardinals, no Will Johnson, no Max Melton in this game. They're starting Jacoby Brissett in this game. Kyler's now on IR. I think that might be a blessing in disguise for them, to be brutally honest. But it just has those makings where Seattle is riding so high and they're struggling. They are struggling to be consistent at home. It's one of those things where I just have that little tiny, like out of 100%, maybe like 5% of it is just kind of lingering there, like a sore thorn in your side.
The reason why I fear, I don't want to say fear, why I think this is going to be a tricky game is because of how competitive Arizona has been despite their record. So every game they've had has been reasonably close. Like the Dallas game, I think, is the first time all season they've had a game go beyond one score. So you think about week one, they had to survive a late drive against New Orleans to win by 7. And then the following week, they almost blow a huge lead against Carolina, which ends up being a foreshadowing for why their season is now on the break. So who did they lose to? San Francisco, walk-off field goal. Seattle, they come back from 14 down, lose on a walk-off anyway. Tennessee, that should have been a gimme game, and they're up big. And Amari DiMercato drops the football, hot dog and celebrating too early. And then a huge set of fluke plays. Tyler Lockett gets a touchdown on a fumble recovery in the end zone, and they end up winning on a walk-off field goal. 3 straight games, last play of the game is a walk-off field goal. And then they play Indianapolis. They're up in that game against a red-hot Colts team, and they give up a late touchdown, and they drive down the field, and they come up, 10 yards short. They were goal to go, I believe, on the last series of the game, and they don't score. Following week, they play Green Bay. They have a lead on Green Bay. I believe they were up double digits. They blow the lead, give up a touchdown to Josh Jacobs with a minute left. They drive deep into Green Bay territory, and Micah Parsons sacks Brissett, and then they kind of throw a Hail Mary at the end, and it's incomplete. So you look at their 5 losses, all agonizingly close. If even 2 of those results flip, they are very much alive in the NFC West race. And instead, they are basically another loss away from being done because they can't afford 0-4 in the division. They'd have tiebreakers on nobody at that point. And they haven't played the Rams yet, and I wouldn't favor them to sweep the Rams. So they've been more competitive than the record suggests. Jacoby Brissett has been a better fit for that offense than Kyler Murray. And their defense, while missing the corners, we're seeing the immediate impact Walter Nolan made against Dallas's offensive line. And Arizona's defensive line without Walter Nolan was giving Seattle's O-line fits in that game, backing Lindale. And what's his name? Garrett Williams is also back. So they won't have – there'll be a trade-off. They'll lose 2 corners, but they'll gain 1 back who was injured. So Arizona, I think, is still playing desperate ball. They know that they have no room for error at this point. They got a brutal schedule still. They've got the Seattle game. They've got San Francisco, I believe, in a week or two. They've got 2 Rams games. So just those are just the division games. They got Houston and Tampa Bay. Like Houston's backs are against the wall. They got Tampa Bay and Tampa Bay 6-2. So they basically, much like Baltimore in the AFC, have got to treat every week as a playoff game. So I think we're going to get another tough game. It's up to the Seahawks to kind of stop getting in their own way, because they thankfully didn't do that last week against Washington. But at home, as you say, the last home game we watched, they dominated Houston and only won by 8 because they committed 4 turnovers, 2 of which were just completely needless in terms of play calling and decision making. So I'm just begging them to simmer down at home. Can't believe I'm saying that, but simmer down and relax a bit in their home games, because it's almost like they're too amped up and just get out of character with some of their performances. So yeah, I'm fearing. I guess I will say I'm fearing that this game could be closer than expected, or that it could just turn 1 or 2 plays into a loss. I'm not expecting it, but what would turn over a new leaf to me is if they also blow out Arizona. If they win comfortably against Arizona, so like by 2 scores, by 14 points, then that tells me that this is a lot closer to the dominant Pete teams than anything else, and that Mike Macdonald has got them really in a groove. So yes, this is still a big game. I know, ignore the record. This is still, to me, a competitive game on paper.
Yeah, and so like some of the key matchups in this game is going to be Seattle's pass rush versus Cardinals O-line. Like we'll talk about it in the 3 key segments because it's one of my keys. The other one is Seattle's receiving core versus injury-riddled Cardinals defensive secondary. Like not having Will Johnson and Max Melton in there, and Max Melton was the guy that basically was trying to stick like glue to JSN and did for a bit of that game, especially in the first half. But now he's out. So I got a feeling, because again, this Shaheed trade, you're getting a guy that knows this offense already, basically. Terminology needs to get caught up. Okay, fine. I don't know if you see it where it's Shaheed, maybe he's in there 10, 12 plays in total. Like I think there's a good chance you're going to see quite a bit of Shaheed in this offense. And if I'm Arizona, what do I do in this game? Because I could see this, as much as people I see in the chat going, oh, this means Sam's going to go off for 300. It could very well happen. I could also see Seattle's running game all of a sudden coming to light, because considering how injury-riddled this Arizona secondary is, they may not want to give up anything over the top or any big explosive pass plays. And all of a sudden, K9 and Charbonnet might have bigger running lanes to hit and run through. And that's where this kind of thing is going to happen through the back half of the season, is how our team's going to want to deal with the Seahawks offense going forward. So, where for you, Mookie, does Seattle have the biggest schematic edge this Sunday?
I think that Seattle's secondary, even without Josh Jobe, is more than capable of shutting down Arizona's receivers, because after Marvin Harrison Jr., there's just not a lot there. Michael Wilson's all right, but like Greg Dortch is kind of a one-trick pony, and he's not got reliable hands. Zay Jones is still kicking around, and I don't think he played in the first game, but he's an unremarkable receiver, and he's bounced around a bit for a reason. So I think they can shut down the receivers. I'm a little worried about Trey McBride being much more utilized by Brissett, and that he's scoring touchdowns with Jacoby than in ways that he wasn't with Kyler. But I think that the secondary can still do work, because this is not an outstanding Arizona team in terms of skill position talent, especially with James Conner done for the season. So I think it's stymieing Harrison, and to me, Reek and Witherspoon are not going to have their ankles broken like Deron Bland had his ankles broken on Monday night by Harrison. And basically, to me, the rest of the guys should be able to shut down the other Arizona receivers. So I think that maybe it's in 2 ways. I expect Seattle's receivers, even banged up, to beat up on Arizona's secondary, and I expect Seattle's secondary to mostly shut down Arizona's receivers. And I specify receivers because there's a different story with Trey McBride and possibly no Ernest Jones.
Yeah, but then the one name I'm going to say is Nick Eamon-Wari, who didn't play in this matchup the last time. And I think Nick is going to have a big role in dealing with Trey McBride on Sunday. But the other thing, Mookie, is, if Kupp does play on limited snaps, how much do we think that changes the offensive script when you get into those situations with you're later on in the game, or you think they're going to probably limit his snaps early so he's more available to them later in the game if they need him? Or do you think Kupp's going to get, a good dose of early action to see if he can hold up?
I think they're going to use him at least in the first couple of series, and then we'll see how his body holds up after the scripted plays are over. Because if you don't play him, Shaheed still just got here. I don't know how much you really want to have Cody White as your de facto number 2 receiver. Like, Cody was a great story, but one catch was one catch. It was a great catch and a great play, 60-yard touchdown. But is Cody White going to be a guy who's going to be heavily targeted in this game? I don't think so. So I think that they're going to play Kupp not 100% of his usual snaps. I think they're going to kind of have him on a snap count limit. But the thing with Kupp is that I don't know enough about Shaheed's blocking abilities. So you still want to have that blocking ability that Kupp presents as a means of improving the run game, because Seattle had a stretch against Washington where they're getting some good running plays, but they never really got into rhythm. And part of it is because they were passing the ball so damn well, there was no need to run. But to me, the running game in the Arizona victory in Glendale, from my recollection, Cooper Kupp had some pretty significant blocks in that one. So just having that element to Kupp's game that isn't just what he can do as a receiver, I think is important for this offense, because I do believe they're going to keep trying like hell, as they should, to get this running game on track, because not every defense is going to be surrendering to Sam and JSN. As much as I would love for that to be the case, you're going to have that backup plan, or less of a backup plan and more of this is what you intended to do all season and you haven't done it yet, but you're going to keep at it. So I think there's every reason to keep at it without just being stubborn. Like, don't do it over to the point where you're losing snaps or having inefficient snaps when you could be throwing it, but keep finding that rhythm that has been lacking so much this year.
So I've got an interesting question for you. So we all are almost certain that Ernest Jones is not going to play this game. Mm-hmm. We know he's not doing a pregame test or anything. And when Mike has said that in the past, those guys generally don't play that Sunday. So in your case, Mookie, then who sets the tone for the Seattle defense this week? Is it Spoon? Is it Big Cat? Is it Jaron Reed? Is it Byron Murphy? Is it DeMarcus Lawrence? Like, who is going to be that person to set the tone, since Ernest won't be there as the, on the field, at least, as that emotional tone setting leader that he is for this team?
I think it's going to be Big Cat again. I think that this Arizona interior offensive line, which includes Evan Brown, Seahawks legend, by the way, I believe that Big Cat's in for another big performance, because the one drop off with Jacoby versus Kyler Murray is that Jacoby is hard to sack for strength reasons, but he's not hard to sack from the premise of escapability through fleet of foot. So we just watched Leonard Williams chase down Jaden Daniels on 4th and long. In hindsight, Jaden was going to get tackled by Thomas anyway, so he would have been short regardless. But the fact that a big man, 300 plus pounds, was able to take down a guy as athletically gifted as Jaden Daniels in the open field like that tells you what a freak athlete Big Cat is. And we remember last year in the home win over Arizona, the 16-6 game, Leonard Williams almost single-handedly beat Arizona's offense because they couldn't block him and Kyler couldn't escape him. And I think that the way that Williams is playing, which is probably not going to be defensive player of the year level, because he needs to just stack up sacks at this point. And also we got other guys like Nick Bonito, for example, who are going to be on pace for 20 sacks, it seems. But to me, Leonard Williams is going to be that guy who just absolutely wrecks shop. And Dan Conroy's kind of jogging my memory here. I wouldn't put it past Tank Lawrence, because don't forget he got injured in that game, for Tank Lawrence to also to be a tone setter, less as a pass rusher and more of, you're going to continue, you're probably going to try and run the ball, and it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to work. Even with your backups, with DeMercado and Bam Knight, I think that Tank is going to be in there to shut that down.
It'll definitely be interesting. But Mookie, let's talk about the 3 keys of the game for the Seahawks going into this one on Sunday. Key number 1 for me is early down wins. Don't let Arizona dictate tempo to you on either side of the ball. So offensively, open up the playbook with some quick throws, get the zone inside and outside zone going. Let Charbonnet and Ken Walker get some rhythm against this, and get the ball out of your hands. Get the ball into JS hands quick. Get the ball into Rashid Shaheed and Cooper Kupp's hands quickly and let them do something with it. And the same with the tight ends. Like, that's the way to stay ahead of it. So that's where I would go first. Defensively, force Brissett into long yardage. Like, keep that Arizona defense or offense in long third downs, long second downs. Make them hang on to the ball and let your guys get home on defense.
Yeah, early downs was a success for Seattle last week because they dominated on early down. They got touchdowns, I think, on first down with Horton or second down with Horton the first time, and they got a touchdown on first down with Arroyo, and they got a touchdown on first down with Cody White. So when you're hitting those explosives, and you're also winning on third downs by having more third and manageable. So like first, that game started with them at 1st and 25 because of a Robbie Oots clipping penalty or chop block penalty that wasn't a chop block because Lucas wasn't engaged. But that aside, they got out of 1st and 25 with, I think, an 8-yard gain, and then JSN is wide open because Washington is playing way, way, way back, and it turns 1st and 25 into 3rd and 4, and you end up converting on the next play. So to me, that's what's been lacking for Seattle, where when they've been getting behind the sticks, when they've been behind schedule, they haven't been able to cope. And that's been a tale as old as time when it comes to Seahawks football. But you win on early downs on offense, that's how you sustain drives. And then defensively, if you can get Arizona into obvious passing situations, that's where, frankly, McDonald's boys are ready to feast. And that's where you get to see those creative blitz packages, sim pressures. I can see McDonald just salivating at teeing off on those guys because Arizona just doesn't have enough guys that you have to respect down the field. So if you can force Arizona into 3rd and long, I think that you can just start getting your punt return team prepped for the next play.
Key number 2, protect the football, finish drives. So Seattle has struggled at home protecting the football. We know that. They've almost, I think, turned it over in every game at home or getting close to that. Cardinals, they're a banged up unit on defense, but they're still pretty opportunistic. I think they've had 5 straight games now with the takeaway of some sort. Seattle, they got to stay efficient in the red zone. Finish these drives off. They're currently a top 10 unit in red zone efficiency right now, which is great. It needs to continue at home. Protect the ball. Finish the drives when you have your opportunities.
Yes, I mentioned it before that since McDonald became head coach in 2024, the Seahawks are dead last in turnover differential in home games, which is abysmal. And it's a major reason why the record has been the way it's been under McDonald at Lumen Field. But a way to fix that, don't turn it over. I mean, you're not always going to get 3 or 4 turnovers forced by your defense and your special teams, but you can control the sloppiness of your own offense and occasionally the special teams. So the offense just has to stay disciplined, as you said, protect the football. I don't doubt that they're going to be able to finish drives. The only times really that they're struggling in the red zone is when Kubiak will occasionally call 3 straight runs inside the 10, for example. And they just, kind of get in their own way in terms of not letting Sam sling it in the end zone. But otherwise, this red zone offense is so much better than any of the Geno teams. And no, I don't mean it as a slight to Geno. It's just that unfortunately he's in the line of fire because they're also terrible in the red zone in Vegas. So there may be a pattern with him specifically that where he has a role in the red zone struggles. But Sam has just been ripping apart teams in the red zone. He's been one of the best red zone quarterbacks in the league. They've been able to get the Zach Charbonnet vulture touchdowns. In fact, Kenneth Walker hasn't scored since the Saints game because when it's the 1-yard line, it's time to play Charbonnet. And evidently last week, it's time to play A.J. Barner. So when the tight end is getting a rushing touchdown, a rushing carry at the goal line, and K9 that tells you. But yeah, finishing drives, I think, will be not an issue for the Seahawks. It's the turnovers I'm worried about because against inferior teams, the easiest way to let them back into a game or the easiest way to turn a close game into a loss is to commit back-breaking turnovers. And in that Houston game, that Darnold fumble in the end zone for a touchdown could have easily been a game changer, and luckily they made up for it. The Stingley interception was needless, and it led to a touchdown that got Houston within 8. And then the Cooper Kupp interception, that was just stupid. I mean, it was a terrible play call, bad execution. And while Houston, I believe, did not score on that play, score on that possession, it took away points from Seattle because they were already in field goal range.
Yeah, and that's kind of why it's key number 2, and it's higher up there than maybe, most people would have thought. But key number 3 and the final key of the game for the Seahawks to get a victory, unleash this front 7. The Cardinals offensive line, they're struggling to mesh. They've got guys missing. And Brissett's got mobility, but it's limited. It's nothing special. It's not going to, he's not the young player he once was. Disrupt him in the pocket as much as you can. Murphy, Lawrence, Leonard Williams need to dominate. Derek Hall, Chenna as well. Maybe this is an opportunity for Boy Mafe to get on the sack sheet and as well as Hall and start affecting it and not rely just on poor Chenna and then the D tackles and DeMarcus Lawrence to do the work. I think I'll be honest, Mookie, if this front seven gets unleashed and goes after Brissett, I think this game could get really ugly really quickly for Arizona.
Yeah, definitely could. And we got a comment here. OFG dude, didn't Chenna not miss the Cards game also? No, he not only played, he got 2 sacks in that game. So
that was his coming out party.
Yeah, that was his coming out party. And he leads the team in sacks. 5. He's got 5.5. Murphy's got 5. So this is a great bounce back year for Chenna. He is the Seahawks comeback player of the year, bar none. So yeah, unleashing the front seven. I love watching Drake Thomas blitz. So I think that Thomas in coverage and especially on play action can get fooled. And I'm worried a bit about the assumption that Tyrese Knight is going to play and some of the things that could be done in the middle of the field where he's just not following his guy or he's kind of slow to read what's going on. But in terms of the pass rush, yeah, I not only see what the defensive line can do, and keeping in mind, like Jonah Williams for the right tackle for Arizona, he looks beyond cooked. It wasn't like he was amazing in Cincinnati, but he was better than what he is right now. And part of why Dallas was threatening a comeback is because Jonah Williams was trying to destroy the integrity of every snap. So I believe that the Seahawks defensive line should continue to be the superior unit when we're talking about D-line versus offensive line. But I also believe that we can still see the creative play calling from McDonald in terms of pass rushing design, where you might drop a couple of big guys into coverage. You might see Eamon Worry screaming off the edge, or maybe doing a B gap blitz. I mean, he was close to sacking Jaden Daniels. Both him and Spoon got pressures on Daniels that could have been sacks, and one of them turned into an interception. So it's not just the front seven to me. It's what Spoon and Eamon Worry can do as blitzers as well. So, yeah, I believe that Seattle is going to continue to just keep on keeping on against Arizona's offense. The Rams game we can get to another time, because that, I'm sure, can be punished by somebody as good as McVay and as good as Matthew Stafford and as great as the Rams offense is overall. But Arizona's offense, even though they've been better under Brissett, I don't really think that they're just meant to be suddenly a top 10 unit.
No, exactly. And so, you know what, Mookie, this leads perfectly into the score predictions. So I'll let you go first. What is your score prediction for this game on Sunday?
I am leaning toward about 24-17. So I don't think they're going to have as easy as they're not going to have just a cakewalk against Arizona the way they did against Washington, because not to pour water on the victory by any means, because it's been a long time since we've had this many blowout wins for Seattle. And by that, I mean 2. But that Washington defense is lousy. And Dan Quinn, I think, is having the same problem in Washington that he had in Atlanta, which is when he has the offensive coordinator, when he has the offense, nobody really pays attention to how bad his defenses are. His defenses, when he's the coordinator, are usually great. His defenses, when he's the head coach, are usually bad. So Arizona, I think, has got a good defense, even with the injuries. And the defensive front that gave Seattle so much trouble the first time will have Walter Nolan in there, in addition to the fact that old man Calais Campbell's still cooking. You've got Josh Sweat also in there. So there are going to be some worries for me as far as protecting Sam Darnold, the efficiency of the run game and all that. Ultimately, though, I don't think that the Seahawks defense is going to let Arizona run wild. And by run wild, I don't mean literally just running the ball. I don't believe that Brissett is going to be just slinging it all over the field to maximum success against the Seahawks team. So I think that it'll be close, but it'll be one of those, let's say Seattle's up 24-10 and Arizona gets a touchdown in the fourth quarter. They decide not to go for 2 because the teams are going for 2 down 8 a lot more these days. And Seattle is able to maybe get a long clock-killing drive, and Arizona really doesn't have a chance to respond. So actually I'm going to change that. I'm going to go 27-17. So it becomes a closer game in the fourth quarter, and they kill the game off with one of those drives that you and I love. Pound the football. Get these short play action games, play action passes going, roll out Sam Darnold on the bootleg, hit up AJ Barner, hit up somebody coming across the formation, just methodical, move the ball down the field and kick a game-clinching field goal with Jason Myers. So I think it'll be a 27-17 win that's reasonably close throughout the afternoon, but Seattle is able to land the knockout blow within the final 4 minutes.
All right, well, I'm going to go with this. My Seahawks headline come Monday morning will be Seahawks handle business at Lumen and get it rocking again.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Seattle winning 30-16 over the Arizona Cardinals, and I think the first half of the game will be close, and I think then Seattle will take over and dominate the second half of the game. A little bit of a reverse of the Commanders game. I think because it's a divisional game, they're always close in the initial part, but I think some of the injuries on the side of the Cardinals will start to wear on them a little bit more than what we've seen with Seattle, just because Seattle has good depth in behind the guys that are out. And I got a feeling, I'll say this, my stat lines, I'll just give them right now. I think Sam goes for 275 and 2 TDs. I think JSN has 7 catches for 105 yards and a touchdown. I think Rasheed Shaheed has 3 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I was about to say that Rasheed Shaheed is going to get his debut touchdown, and that JSN is going to, even if he doesn't score, I think he's going to get 100+ yards again because it's just been that good. Knock on wood, what is most amazing to me with this Sam to JSN connection, given how often he's been targeted relative to everybody else on the roster, 0 interceptions thrown his way. Mm-hmm. I mean, Darnold's thrown, 5 interceptions? So the first one he threw was intended for Kupp. That was a bad ball. One was for Barner and got tipped. The Tampa Bay game, I think, was also for Kupp, and I think that also got tipped at the line. And then against Houston, that was for either Arroyo or Barner. I think it was for Barner, and it was undercut by Stingley. And then the 5th interception was a bad ball behind Cody White. And if you hit him in stride, then Cody White might still be running. So when he's throwing a JSN, very rarely am I even seeing passes defensed. It's either incomplete or it's caught. Incomplete as in not touched by anybody, or it's caught. So that's what amazes me the most. This is like the Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett 2018 season on steroids. It is an overdrive, the efficiency that these two are able to churn out on a weekly basis.
The other thing I'm going to add to my stat line is I think both Charbonnet and Ken Walker rush for over 50 yards and have over 4 yards of carry each per carry.
I think the run game is going to struggle a bit. It'll be one where it's like 115 yards rushing, but on not efficient numbers. So they go under 4 carry. Maybe some of it is a couple of runs to kill the clock more than anything. They gain a yard or 2, but you're worried about taking 40 seconds off, then gaining 6 or 7 at a time. I think that it'll still be a game where the passing game wins out. There'll be some hiccups. There are going to be some sacks, I believe, but Seattle will still get the W. But on defense, I believe that Nicky Manwari gets at least one of these things: his first sack, his first turnover. So turnover means if he forced the fumble, I'm going to count that as a turnover. If he recovered the fumble, I'll count that. And of course, if he picks it, then turnover. I think Manwari is going to up his splash play count to something that is worthy of being on the box score as a highlight play.
All right, Mookie. Well, with that being done, let's get into our 12s Q&A blitz. So we've got so many people in the chat that have been kind enough to stick around. We've got 739 of you guys watching the show and contributing in the chat, which is great. If you're over on Twitter and you're watching on the feed there, you can put your comments in there. They will populate in the chat over here, and I'll be able to answer any of the questions you've got. But let's start here, Mookie. We'll start from the very beginning. So Seahawks fan 72 really likes the intro, as well as Amy with the dunk that I added of JSN. I won't fine him, guys, for dunking on the goalpost, unlike the NFL that will use it as their thumbnail and then choose to fine our player afterwards, which was an absolute joke. Amy also brings up our moderator of the chat with Ian Victor, the 75-man roster. That is one thing, when we were talking about next man up, that the Seahawks have done better than they have any other year this year, is that 70-man roster philosophy of the practice squad and everything.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bummer to lose Jarek Reed to the Titans, and I guess we got to address it. They claimed Jarek Reed and waived Quandre Diggs. Yeah. And Quandre apparently asked for his release. So, just like Tyler Lockett did, the Titans are a sinking ship. They're going to rebuild. All the veterans are probably going to be gone. I mean, they traded Draymond Jones, so they are un-Seahawking themselves after acquiring so many of the vets. So maybe Cody Barton should ask out and go back to go to a contending team or something like he was with Denver. But yes, this practice squad stuff has worked out very well in terms of who they've elevated and the effectiveness of those guys, and also the guys at the bottom end of the roster who've been able to contribute.
Does this mean Quandre is going to end up in Vegas now?
I don't know the Raiders' safety situation, but and that would reunite him with Jamal. But Jamal has been hanging out at linebacker, and then Tyler.
He's actually been doing quite well at linebacker.
Yeah, and Tyler Lockett had 5 catches for 44 yards, which I think he almost had as many yards in one game with the Raiders. And of course, he's got the familiarity with Geno that he did the whole entirety of his time in Tennessee. But Chip Kelly was very. I don't think he's been studying the film because he ran a screen pass with Tyler. I don't know if you saw that game last night.
Yes.
That the game was so bad. I hope they fumigated the stadium because it was just that toxic. But a screen to Tyler in 2025. That's I feel like Chip has just been too inundated with college football to think that was a play that was going to work.
Agreed. CK Seahawk, please no yawns, Bryce. I'm on the East Coast. Yes, apologize to everyone. I've been dealing with a bit of a bug and just a weird sleep schedule recently, so apologies about that. I will make sure I don't yawn nearly as much for any of the East Coast folk out there. Appreciate you guys tuning in from over there. Amy goes, I had to run out and was listening to the radio. Felt like Oprah, you get a TD and you get a TD. Yeah, it kind of was kind of like that in that Commanders game. It really was like, who wants a TD tonight, and we'll find a way to get you one.
I mean, they turned 7-0 into 28-0 in about 4 minutes of game time.
Yeah.
So that reminds me of the 58-0 against Arizona, where they got a pick six and then another touchdown, and then I think the fumble on the punt return to get another score. So it just blew the game open.
Atlanta use Cody White some and the tight ends more this game. I think, I don't know how much Cody White will get. It'll really depend on Cooper Kupp, how much Cody White time we see. But I do think the tight ends are going to play a significant role in this game just due to the receiver injuries.
And we're starting to see more comfortability with the routes and the targets that Arroyo is getting. Yeah. And we know that Barner is just a solid all-around player. So I think we're going to see more of Arroyo as the weeks progress. And then Barner's target share is probably just going to be about the same. But yeah, I think more tight ends involved, especially with no Mac Wilson. I mean, that's one linebacker lost for Arizona. And Barner and Arroyo in the first meeting. Barner scored a touchdown. Arroyo would have had a touchdown if he wasn't interfered with by Budda Baker. So I expect more of the same this weekend.
Dan in the chat goes, having Eddie Lacy on a contract clause tied to weight was the biggest red flag ever. Yeah, that was bad.
That was one of my most favorite things to do because that was my first full season on the Field Goals writing staff. And at that time, I was still simultaneously covering the UFC and boxing. So, of course, if you're a fight fan, in the UFC and boxing that you have to have weight checked. You have to have the weigh-ins the day before a fight. And I basically was treating Eddie Lacy like a boxer. Like he's got to hit this target to get his incentive. I'm doing the Eddie Lacy weight loss check, and unfortunately he didn't lose enough weight to me, and he lost all of his football ability. But yes, that was a signing I supported at the time. That I thought that was a good signing, and boy was I way wrong about that one. That was one of my all-time worst takes.
Wasn't that the same offseason we were hunting TJ Lang the whole time and it just didn't pan out again?
Yeah,
he was the first.
He ended up signing with Detroit.
That's right. Amy back in with, what do you think if we actually roll over the Cards? Does it move the needle for you? So if we steamroll them, does it move it at all for you, Mookie?
Yes, because it means that even if they drop the Rams game, for example, I have full confidence that against significantly inferior opposition, the remaining sub 500 teams on their schedule, that they should roll Tennessee the week after the Rams game, for instance, or against Atlanta. As long as Atlanta's offense just refuses to score consistently, I thought that was a game that could be a loss. But the way Atlanta's offense is right now, I think that's similarly a game where Seattle should be able to win. Even Carolina being at 5-4 right now, there's a little bit of fakeness, I think, to this Panthers record. And that against better teams, they get absolutely throttled and they get absolutely blown out. So I last week notwithstanding, because that Green Bay game was a big time win, but still, I think that's consistently beating teams emphatically. You're not going to do it every week, but beating teams emphatically like they did against New Orleans and they did against Washington, you do it against a division rival. I think that's big time because Arizona is not terrible, but they're worth respecting. And to me, I subscribe to the Aaron Schatz theory that true Super Bowl contenders, they blow out the bad teams. And as far as facing the good or great teams, if you win close against them, that's fine. If you don't blow them out, well, it's probably evenly matched. But against opposition you should be beating, the best teams are able to hammer them consistently. And that was, to me, one of the issues I've had with the Seahawks for like 7-8 years now, where how many times have they either actually lost to a very poor team, a team way worse than Arizona, like the Giants last year, or played a way too close game against a very poor team and come out with the ugliest of wins. Now with Arizona, we've got our history of ugly games against that team. But still, we had the odd 58-0 or 27-10 or 35-6 in there. And it'd be good to go back to those times.
Agreed. HHG goes, can Rams and Niners get so injured that it's a cakewalk for us when we play the Rams? Well, it would be nice.
I'm not cheering for injuries. That's not a good thing to do. I don't know how much more injured the Niners can get is the problem. And
yeah.
And also, can the Rams and Niners get so injured? I mean, if they're playing only the Rams next week, so then you would be more concerned about, can the Rams have Matthew Stafford not play and you end up with all the way down to Stetson Bennett playing because Jimmy G is also hurt. So that Rams game is still going to be, I can't wait for it. That might even be one of those rare times they actually put the lead broadcast team on a Seahawks game lately. I think that to me, that could be one of the biggest games the Seahawks have had since Super Bowl 49, without exaggeration.
No, that's fair. Ian Victor, one of our moderators, go an activation for Poop Hall and Maxine Hook. That's potential this week, because I was going to ask you, Mookie, I didn't get to. Who do you think the third corner is? Now that we know Job's out, we know it's going to be Reek and Spoon as 1 and 2. Is it going to be Kendricks or is it going to be Shaq that's the third corner? I'd assume Kendrick.
I think Kendrick, because they can just move Spoon out to the slot more. And then they can still have Spoon in the slot. You can have Kendrick in the slot alongside Eamon because Eamon can also do some slot stuff. And then Woolen is your other outside corner. If I were a betting man, which I'm not, so FBI, please don't come knocking on my door. I think that O'Connell actually gets a practice squad call up because Drake is going to be taking over for Ernest and Knight's going to be the weak side. So I think O'Connell gets called up, and I think they elevate one of their 8,000 receivers from the practice squad. They got like 6 receivers and one tight end on the practice squad, which is kind of weird. But I think they end up just elevating Cody White again. So White and O'Connell will be my practice squad predictions.
And we've got CK back in here with Tampa game pissed Mike off, so I trust our D will be strong. Yeah. No, Mike, I think, is definitely holding that close to the heart there. That game really did upset him. Dan's back in with, love the rotation of Hall, Law, and Chenna on early downs. Doesn't matter if they run or pass. They really disrupt the edges. Yes, they do. They definitely do that.
Yeah, what I love about this team is that they are not so overly dependent on 1 or 2 guys. So, like, this is the type of pass rush by committee I think I can get behind where, one of these guys, meaning Chenna, could get double-digit sacks. Hall and Mafe don't even have a sack yet. Yeah. Hall has definitely played more than well enough to have a better stat sheet than he actually does. But when everybody is a threat, then I think that's fine. I still would love to have a dominant edge rusher. And I don't think there's anybody on this team that really has that capability. But in lieu of getting a big-time trade for Max Crosby or Trey Hendrickson or anybody else this trade deadline, I think you're fine staying the course for now with the guys that you have because of what they're able to do in terms of rushing as one. And also, it sure helps when your interior is eating up blocks so well that it frees up your edge guys to just wreak havoc on the outside.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be just really interesting to see what these Seahawks do about that edge position, because I think that was definitely something, and I know Mookie, you and me have both had conversations about this off the air, that we know that they were hunting for an edge in this trade deadline, and I don't think that's done yet. And I think it's something they're going to be hunting for in the upcoming off season as well. Like, there is a need that they see there to get a upgrade and add to this group to make it a very difficult group to play against.
Yes, because you got to think big picture. Mafe, free agent. Lawrence is on a 3-year deal, but it's basically 1 year in and out. Chenna has got 1 year left on his contract. And Derek Hall would be in a contract year in the 2026 offseason. So everybody I've listed there is either about to be a free agent or realistically has 1 year left on their deal, because I know Lawrence is on 3. Wouldn't expect him to be here all 3 seasons. So you might have to remake the pass rushing unit anyway on the edges. And to have that super dominant guy, he didn't really have that, did Mike McDonald in Baltimore either. He turned Kyle Van Noy from late career practice squad player to a guy who was leading the team in sacks. And he was like an off-ball linebacker for a bit, and then they played him on the edge, right? So it was a late career positional switch. And then Jadeveon Clowney had his most productive season in forever with him. So he knows how to make the most out of this rush by committee sort of thing. But I think he really wants and salivates for 2 things. Great middle linebacker play, which is why after they had that massive collapse against Miami 3 years ago, it wasn't too long before they traded for Roquan Smith. And then last year, we saw what happened with Dotson and Baker. Out you go. In comes Ernest Jones to fill at least one of those spots. So inside linebacker, I think, is big for McDonald. And then just having an edge rusher that he hasn't really had who can single-handedly take over a game. And really, the Seahawks haven't truly had that kind of guy since, to me, the best years of Frank Clark. And even Frank Clark was not always the most consistent guy on a game-to-game basis. Sometimes he would get in volume and then disappear for a bit. So it's been a minute since the Seahawks have had a guy who was just, man, you got to account for him all the time.
The last guy, Mookie, that I can think of for Seattle where you went, man, you had to account for him, was Patrick Kearney's season.
Yep. The 2007 Seahawks. I mean, that was a great one of Tim Ruskell's best free agent signings, because God knows that same offseason he signed Brian Russell, one of the worst Seahawks ever. But after that, after that is if Clemens has had 3 straight double-digit sack seasons, but it was in the low double digits. 10, 11 and a half that. But to have a guy who could get 14 sacks now, because I think that year Kearney had 14.
14 or 14 and a half, I think he had. It was something ridiculous like that.
Something like that. He was a contender for Defensive Player of the Year, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And since then, the Seahawks haven't really had that sort of prodigious edge rusher. We might have a prodigious guy in Byron Murphy on the inside, but to have somebody on the outside too, I mean, that's scary hour for somebody like McDonald to have basically force multipliers everywhere at all 3 levels.
Agreed. And actually, Seahawks fan 72, what do you guys think the likelihood is that we're able to acquire Crosby in the offseason? If we had him, I think it would be the final piece to a true Super Bowl contender. I would say there's a good chance if the Raiders season derails that will be a conversation that is definitely reignited, I would assume, by John Schneider and the Seahawks organization if they want to go get an elite pass rusher. Because I think, and from what I have heard from sources close to the team, Crosby is a much easier acquisition than, say, a Myles Garrett, for that matter.
Yeah, from some of what I've heard through the grapevine, and please, yes, but it might not seem plausible, but yes, we've been here, and I've certainly been here long enough, but even Bryce is in the same circles as some people in the know, that we know some things that the general public doesn't know. So with Max Crosby, I mean, when was his extension? It was a 4-year deal, so he's a free agent a few years down the road, but it is very, very affordable with his current contract structure. So, I think it was always unlikely that he was going to get traded this year. But when you look at the cap savings from 2027 onward, once he hits his age 30 season, I mean, basically he is a prime trade candidate in 2026. I don't think Myles Garrett will get dealt. And if he does, I think he's going to cost way too much. Don't get me wrong. He's absolutely astonishing. But I think that Crosby is somebody who would benefit from being with Mike McDonald. I also don't think they go for Trey Hendrickson either. I think if they're going to make a splash move, it's going to be somebody who is close to 30 or under 30. Because I think that would make most sense for it to be longer than a 1 or 2 year deal. If they do grab Myles Garrett, though, then ignore our sources and then head over to Reddit, because apparently that's where that's where the last Myles Garrett rumor happened. So Reddit is your place to go to find any Myles Garrett traction. See if he's on a flight to SeaTac right now. Because if he wants to win, it ain't going to be in Cleveland anytime soon. I can tell you that. Makes it all the more amusing he signed such a huge contract, but money, I guess money can cure dissatisfaction with the team and the lack of success.
Yeah, that is I would definitely say Crosby's the more likely one, and this whole situation reminds me very much, because we know he tried in this first off season when Gino and them to get Crosby. Then John tried. Albert Breer reported that as well, and it just got shot down at the time. This has the makings of a Marshawn Lynch type situation. When John finds a player he falls in love with and wants, same with Leonard Williams, he will keep coming back to it until it's actually dead in the water and not actually plausible. So I think it's something to keep an eye on for sure. But Mookie, outside of that, let's talk about some upcoming stuff that's going on over at Field Goals. What do you guys have going on over there for this weekend and coming up?
Yeah, we got our usual game coverage. In fact, we just have hired a new staff writer to join the Field Goals team. We had our own midseason acquisition. His name is Jack Freeman. He just wrote his first article earlier on Friday afternoon. It was about the Titans letting go of Quandre Diggs. And by the way, the reason why veterans like Quandre can get waived instead of released is because the trade deadline has passed. So after the trade deadline passes, then even veterans are subject to waivers. So it would be something if he gets claimed, because he's on a cheap deal. But who knows if he does reunite in Seattle? I don't think it happens. He'll probably go to Vegas. But anyway, yeah, you can look for more weekend game coverage. We'll have I think Alessandra's already done a game preview for this Cardinals game. And I'll have my 5 predictions for Seahawks versus Cardinals. I have my bold prediction. I have my prediction for the offense, defense, and what Arizona could do. And then the final score prediction I already gave away on air. So it's like I don't even have to do it in the article itself. But and then Sunday, of course, you know the deal. If you've been following Field Goals for a while, after the game is done, we have our final score article. We have our GIF party in the feed section if the Seahawks win. So you can just tell us your feelings using one GIF. It doesn't even have to be Seahawks related. Tell us how you feel about the Seahawks performance in one GIF. And then winners and losers. I know people love that. So the winners and losers from this game. Michael Thompson has got the 4-down territory column, which he does and often does the same day that the Seahawks Aftermath comes out. And then Ted Zahn has also got his Ted's Talk post-game analysis. And John Fraley has the increasingly popular Words of Prey post-game series. That is kind of a spiritual replacement for the Cigar Thoughts that Jackson Bevins did for us for so many years. So we've got you covered all angles, all the takes for Seahawks game day. So check us out on Sunday. And you know that you can always check out Bryce's work too on Field Goals. And also, I mean, we're family of Field Goals. So I'm working with him. He does shows with Michael. So you're going to expect this regularly, including some post-game content in the form of the Seahawks Aftermath, for example.
Got an interesting comment in here from Dogzilla. Does the sleeper app allow me to make Bryce wear a turkey hat on his head if we win? Why would I have to wear a turkey hat, Dogzilla? Why the turkey hat? What did I do here?
Turkey makes you sleepy, apparently. Is this a Thanksgiving joke?
I wonder if it is. I have no idea, but we'll go with it. Over here, everyone on the Hawk side just released an episode about an hour before me and Mookie went live here. I had Blake Murphy from the Redbird Reboot podcast on. We did a breakdown of the Cards Seahawks matchup. Got a lot of intake from Blake on where the Cardinals are at, how he thinks this potential season's going to go the rest of the way for them. How is the Kyler Murray IR situation? Because when we recorded, it had just broke that day that he was going to IR. So that's up. Tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. on the channel, there will be a release of another film breakdown. However, it's Coach Derek from All 22 Films that joins me, and we break down and get his opinion on the Rasheed Shaheed trade, how he thinks he fits in. Coach Derek does a fantastic job at All 22 Films. So make sure you guys are tuned up for that. And then I'll leave this out here. So I will potentially do a quick live 30-minute reaction post-game show solo following the Seahawks game Sunday, if there are enough comments in the chat that you guys want me to do that. Otherwise, as always, our Seahawks post-game show will be Monday night, Seahawks Aftermath with myself and Michael Thompson. at 7:45 p.m. Pacific time. So make sure you guys tune in for that. And as always, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, click the notification button, like all the videos, comment on all the videos. I love interacting with you guys and having the discussions. Outside of that, Mookie, I think that's about it for tonight and for us. So stay loud, be proud, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Good night, everybody.